Today we read from Matthew 28, 1 to 10. Now after Sabbath done, early Sunday morning, the first day of the week come. Mary Magdalene and the next Mary go look upon the tomb.
And all of a sudden, one wicked earthquake shake up the place.
Cause one of God's angel them come down from heaven and come roll with the stone and sit down upon it.
Him did look bright like a lightning, and him clothes did white like snow.
The guardy them did so frightened, them are shaking at them bone.
Them drop a ground and tiff out like a them dead.
But the angel said to the woman them say, "No afraid."
Me know say a Jesus who know I look for, the one where them kill upon the cross.
Him not there, cause God make him come back alive, just like what him did say.
Come look which part him did a lay down. Then hurry up and go tell him follower them say him dead and come back alive.
Him a go a Galilee till you no come. Uno we see him there when you no reach.
Me tell you no when me did fi tell you no. Listen what me say and do what me say you no fi do.
The woman them take off quick. Them frightened and glad same time. And them run go tell Jesus follower them.
But Jesus meet them up and said to them, say, "Heal."
Them come to him, bend on the ground, hold on upon him foot and worship him.
Then Jesus said to them say, "No afraid."
Go and go tell my brother them say them can go to Galilee. Them we see me there.
Them we see me there.
Then we see me there.
Then we see me there.
Amen.
Matthew 28, 1 to 10.
We have been sharing with you our Patwa Bible readings, courtesy of the Ministry of Culture since the beginning of Lent, and I do hope you've enjoyed it thus far. Hello there. Welcome to another Sunday edition of Jamaica Magazine. We are observing with biblical reference, Resurrection Sunday. So nice to have you with us today. I'm your host, Adrian Atkinson. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. On Get the Facts this week, we focus our attention on inflation. How much do you know about it? Watch now as we provide you with all the information you need to know.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm Theodore Henry. Our focus today is on inflation, which stood at 7.8% in February this year, and policy actions being taken by the Bank of Jamaica BOJ to get it down to the targeted range of 4 to 6% by December 2023. We're also looking at the BOJ's increase in policy interest rate to deposit-taking institutions and how that should benefit savings accounts and other types of deposits. In studio with me is Senior Deputy Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Dr. Wayne Robinson. Welcome to the program, Dr. Robinson.
Thanks, Theodore. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get the facts. Let me start off. How effective has the BOJ's monetary policy been in reducing inflation?
Okay, so let's probably just start at the beginning.
Right.
Recall when the economies around the world and Jamaica started to open back from COVID.
Right.
We saw a rapid increase in commodity prices, which then impacted Jamaica. Prices of basic commodities in Jamaica started to go up. And then came the Ukraine war, which made it worse.
More pressure, yeah.
And so we moved from a situation where inflation was between 4 and 5% per year, and it went up to as high as 11.8%. Now, for the listeners, I should say, when we talk about inflation, we're talking about the rate at which price increases. And we can think about it as how much it increased last week, or the rate in which it increased over last month, or even over last year. Now, when Bank of Jamaica talks about inflation, we're talking about how much prices has increased, or the rate at which prices has increased over a year, over a 12-month
So it's not a singular thing, it's a rate.
It is a rate. It's about a movement in prices. That's what's important. So in response to these developments, the bank employed a three-pronged strategy. First of all, we increase our policy rate.
Right.
That is the interest rate that we pay on deposits that commercial banks hold at the Bank of Jamaica.
Okay.
And this is meant to signal to the banks that we want interest rates in the economy on a whole to start going up. We also complemented it with two other actions. One, we tightened the amount of Jamaican dollar that was available in the banking system.
Okay.
And also, we were very aggressive in terms of our intervention in the foreign exchange market, in terms of the amount of foreign exchange that you will sell to the foreign exchange market. So these three actions had almost immediate impact on the exchange rate. You will recall, if you look back over the past year, that the exchange rate has been less volatile. In fact, it has been very stable over the past year.
True.
And what this has done is that it has tempered the impact of the increases in imported commodity prices on local prices in Jamaica. So that has been very effective. What we haven't seen as yet, in terms of to the degree that we'd want to see it, is the impact that these policies should have on credit, the amount of loans that are given in the economy by the banking system, and also on the level of savings in the economy. This is what we call in economics the credit channel.
Right.
Now, why this is important? In that the other area when tackling inflation, we not only have to focus on keeping the exchange rate stable, but we also have to try and constrain the amount of demand in the economy or the amount of spending. Because the more demand you have in the economy with a limited supply, is the easier it is for prices to go up.
Okay.
Right. So the other channel we have to focus on is this credit channel in an effort to contain demand in the economy. Now, this aspect of our policy impact takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen as quickly as you'd see the impact on the foreign exchange market.
How long we're talking about here?
It varies. It depends on the state of the economy. It depends on the type of the economy. It depends on the type of the shock. It depends on the structure of the financial system. But what we can say, though, is that we have seen some amount of movements on the commercial bank side, and based on the latest information that we're getting out of the commercial banks, they have actually started to tighten credit conditions. That is, to make it a little bit more difficult and a little bit more expensive to borrow from commercial banks.
No, I want to put something in here. You mentioned that the prices going up, essentially. And I would love to ask why the level of price increases are taking so long to be reduced to a manageable level. You know, the target range that you mentioned, because there is a range.
Yes.
And inflation has exceeded since August 2021, and people are asking these questions like, so you sort of started answering, and I want you to finish along that line. It takes time, but...
Yeah. All right. If you can recall, what really drove these price increases in Jamaica initially was the fact that we saw significant increases in a number of commodities that we import, that we rely on.
Right.
So oil, for example, went up sharply. Grains went up, lumber, steel, even the cost of shipping.
How much of the reasons that you said at the beginning?
Right, those went up. Now, since about June last year in particular, we have seen a number of these commodity prices start to come off. They have not gone back to where they were. I mean, we have seen where, for example, steel and lumber, those have come off and gone back pretty much to where they were prior to the Ukraine invasion. But for the most part, most of these commodities are still above pre-COVID levels, but they're coming down. So what you find happening now is that importers, producers, manufacturers, distributors, retailers, they will still be carrying inventories that they would have bought at higher prices. So it takes time for these inventories to run off. So that's one of the reasons why it will take some time for you to see the prices coming down. The other important thing is that when you're in an environment of high inflation, when you're in an environment where prices are just going up, you find that price increases tend to feed on themselves. Yeah?
So they push each other.
Right. So what you find out, for example, is that you'll see increases in commodities or in services that have nothing to do with imported grains.
That's interesting.
But because I'm producing a service, and I'm facing this very same increase in inflation.
Other portions of life.
I also need to adjust my prices as well to account for the costs that I'm facing as well. We call this a second round effect. So you had the first shock from the commodity prices, then you have these second round effects. So it takes time for these effects to work through the economy. And depending on the state of demand, depending on how fast our policy actions work through the economy, then you'll then see that prices will gradually come down. But what I should point out though is that we are seeing some encouraging signs. You know, inflation peaked at around 11.8% last year, April.
Right.
Since then, it has been coming down. It fell to 9.4% in December. And as you mentioned, at the start of the program, as of February, it fell again to 7.8%.
Right.
So there are some encouraging signs, but we still have to keep a close eye on it because we're not yet out of the woods.
And we remain a part of a global economy.
And we're a part of a global economy.
All right, Doc, we've been having a pretty good conversation so far, and there's quite a bit more that we want to touch. However, we're going to have to go to a short break right now, and we will continue our discussion after the break. So please, stay with us. Welcome back to Get the Facts. Our discussion is on measures by the Bank of Jamaica to lower inflation and the impact on interest rates. Our guest is Senior Deputy Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Dr. Wayne Robinson, and we're going to go into looking at interest rates now, Dr. Robinson. We were picking up on not only inflation, but why it is the way it is. But let's pick up now. So the BOJ policy rate has been increased since October 2021. You mentioned that. But people aren't really seeing higher interest rates on their accounts. Is their saving and deposit accounts. Is there a reason for this?
All right, the first thing we should point out is that there are accounts, there are savings deposit accounts in the banking system that have seen an increase in interest rates.
Okay.
These are typically what we call term deposits. So these are deposits that you have to leave the money there for a certain period of time, like 30 days or 90 days or 180 days, for example. So the rates on these accounts have gone up pretty much in line with, not as much as, but in line with the increases that we have done with respect to our policy rates.
Okay.
But what is happening is that there is a large pool of deposits within the banking system that most persons hold. And these are traditional, what we call our passbook savings accounts. And these type of accounts typically have lower interest rates. And banks, I guess like any other businesses that are trying to constrain their costs or manage their costs, they won't typically increase the rates on these types of accounts, certainly not quickly. And the thing about these types of accounts is that they are very stable. People don't move them around a lot. These accounts are, for the most part, used for transactions purposes, for example. So people don't shift them. People don't shift the deposits in these accounts from one bank to another. So they are pretty stable. And so this is why in our messaging to Jamaicans, we have been encouraging persons to say, well, if you don't have to use your money right now and you can put it down for a little while, shop around. Don't just leave it in these low interest bearing accounts. Shop around. Look at what other banks are offering. Even look at what other products your own banks are offering. Shop around to try and get the best return on your savings.
Understood. Now, I want to ask about the increases to the policy rates. Now, I understand the BOJ has paused increases to the policy rate. Is there a reason you can share with us?
Yes. Well, as we've been communicating to the public, we're saying, look, our policy decisions are based and will be based on the incoming data.
Right.
And based on what the incoming data is telling us, we calibrate our policy adjustments. Okay? And when we talk about incoming data, we are looking at three particular areas. One, the data on price increases themselves. Is that data telling us and giving us the comfort that prices, or the rate at which prices are increases, that is slowing? In other words, is the data on prices telling us that inflation is going to slow?
Okay.
The other aspect that we look at carefully is what the US Federal Reserve Bank is doing with their interest rates. Right? Because if their interest rates sort of set the benchmark for what interest rates you can get on foreign currency securities or foreign currency investments. So if their rates are very high and ours are very low, then any rational person will clearly want to move their money out of Jamaican dollars and put it into foreign currency, which will then put more pressure on the exchange rate. Right. So we have to look carefully at what the Fed is doing. The other area of data that we pay careful attention to is what the banks themselves are doing in terms of their own interest rate, because it gives us a sense as to how effective our policy is, how our policy is transmitting through the system. And we talked about that earlier. So when we look at the data on all of these three factors, we feel a little bit more comfortable now that inflation is on a downward trajectory.
Right.
As I've said earlier, we are not yet out of the woods. There are some risk. We're in a dry period, we're in a drought spell. So in the very short term, we expect agricultural prices to go up. We heard that Saudi Arabia and other OPEC members plan to cut oil production.
Right.
So that is going to affect, or has started to affect oil prices.
Yes.
We also have a situation in Jamaica where in certain sectors, in certain industries, there's a shortage of labor. When you have that happening, it then puts pressure on wages. And then that can also have spillover effects on prices. So there are things that we have to look at. They are what we call risk. But nonetheless, we are a little more comfortable now that inflation is on a downward path. And we believe that certainly by the last quarter of this year, by the December quarter of 2023, we should get back into the 4 to 6% range. The other factors I mentioned is in terms of what the Fed is doing. And certainly if you watch what has happened over the past couple of months, all the indications are suggesting that the Fed rate is probably near its terminal level. They're going to be leveling. It seems so. We don't know precisely. But what we do know and what we're pretty much confident is that they're not going to continue at the pace of increase that they have been doing. The last increase was just 25 basis points, where prior to that they were doing 50 basis points. So they are slowing down. So that's a good sign for us.
I want to introduce something here, though, that many people think that the higher interest rates on loans is difficult to swallow. But it's a comparison between paying now and paying from high inflation later. How do you help them to understand the necessity now?
Well, first of all, it is hard. If you have to pay more on your mortgage, if you have to pay more on your credit card, if you have to pay more for your car loan, that is difficult. That is hard. But if you step back, I think we all agree that high inflation hurts everyone. It hurts the poor, it hurts the pensioner who is on fixed income, it hurts the worker who is on fixed income.
Right.
High inflation doesn't even help businesses in the long run either.
Right.
Because in an environment of high inflation, if things are going up, if your costs are going up every day, you really can't plan. And if as a business you can't plan properly, then you won't be investing. And so the economy suffers. So nobody really benefits in the long term from high inflation. And so that is why it's important that we get it done quickly. Because history has taught us no economy can grow sustainably and create jobs in a meaningful way unless inflation is low, stable, and predictable. So that is why we have to break the cycle as quickly as possible.
Right.
Now, it's going to involve some short-term pain, but we must remember that there is an objective at the end of the day.
There's a point to this.
There is a point to the pain.
I want to close. We're almost out of time, Doc, and I want to close off with we started off by what the inflation target was. Is the BOJ committed to getting back there, or is that target revised?
No, the target has not changed, and it is the government that sets the target.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I should back up a minute and recall when the government decided to reform the Bank of Jamaica and our monetary policy regime. They did something that's very critical in the new Bank of Jamaica Act, in that they made very clear what the mandate of Bank of Jamaica is.
Yes.
And it's two things. One, price stability and financial system stability. But the Parliament went further to make very clear that price stability is the primary responsibility. So that's our raison d'etre.
Right.
And we have a large team of capable economists who are looking on this day in, day out.
Yeah.
And they advise the bank's monetary policy committee that is responsible for setting monetary policy. And the mandate of the monetary policy committee is to achieve an inflation of 4 to 6% and try to keep it there.
No.
And that is what we're focused on.
No, I know. I'm not trying to ask you to give me a time frame, but are you confident that this can perhaps be achieved by the end of this year?
We are confident, and as the data comes in, we're a little bit more confident. As I indicated earlier, inflation is trending down, pretty much in line with our forecasts.
Right.
Also, what's important as well is that, you know, when you strip away the impact of these commodity prices, you take that out of the inflation basket, and then you look at what inflation that is left, which is really the underlying or trend inflation.
Right.
We call that core inflation in economics. That is also coming down. As of February, that's about 6.6%. So that's slightly above the 4 to 6% range.
Right.
So there are some positive signals. Commodity prices, they have been coming down. But as I indicated earlier, there are some risks that we have to be mindful of, that we have to pay attention to. And based on how these things evolve, the Bank of Jamaica and its Monetary Policy Committee will pivot or will adjust or recalibrate its monetary policy strategy.
Thank you so much, Doc. I hope you'll allow me to just summarize that and say cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. You'd said it very well.
I like that. Okay, good. Well, thank you for staying with us. That was a conversation that will and should have you thinking a great deal about our financial sector, what goes into the policy. And our guest was Senior Deputy Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Dr. Wayne Robinson. He gave us a lot to think about and a lot to consider as we see the movements being taken in our economy and by our government. So, thank you for watching. And until next time, I'm Theodore Henry. Take good care.
In this next feature, we share the budget breakdown of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport.
So the gross recurrent allocation for the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport for the fiscal year 2023-2024 stands at $5.361 billion. This includes $337.58 million in appropriations in aid.
Gender mainstreaming is a primary focus for the ministry. That's reflected in the budgetary allocation of $784.44 billion. This money will continue interventions to address issues relating to gender-based violence, inequality, and discrimination. The performance target for the 2023-24 fiscal year includes growth in the number of new gender focal points identified and trained. The ministry is also targeting an increase in the number of micro-businesses participating in the Women's Entrepreneurship Support Program. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Gender Affairs receives $36.5 million uptick in its budget to facilitate the empowerment of women, develop policies, and implement research. And the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation, which has responsibility for promoting a new approach to the problems associated with teenage pregnancy, is receiving $381.64 million.
We have approximately 18 centers across the island, and the program takes care of teenage mothers and pregnant teenagers, assist them to continue their education during their pregnancy, and to carry them through to having them reintegrated back into the school system or ensure that they get a skill. Of course, you all know we had a very successful Reggae Month. Extremely successful.
The ministry has been financed to undertake other such entertainment support interventions during the fiscal year. The promotion of entertainment economic linkages gets $85 million. This is to support the development of an entertainment policy and an entertainment industry act, as well as to develop, market, and export local talents. The funds will also aid in strengthening the entertainment sector's synergies with the creative industries and tourism, and implement programs to facilitate an enabling business environment for creative practitioners. Some of this will be achieved through entertainment zones.
We have identified facilities right across the island to be established as entertainment zones. There are facilities already available for use. All the Port Authority facilities across the island are available, and the stadium complex, every inch of the stadium complex is being used now.
Over $2 billion will be spent developing and promoting Jamaica's creative industries and protecting and preserving its cultural and heritage assets during the financial year. That includes money to host Grand Gala and National Heritage Week activities. Some highlights include $57 million to support the Junior Center's work to provide young people with opportunities to acquire knowledge and developmental skills in various art forms. History and culture are stored in the artifacts of the past, and the ministry is investing substantially in the preservation of indigenous flora and fauna, as well as cultural materials. Almost $500 million will be dedicated to the identification, conservation, and restoration of heritage assets. $929.5 million will be spent on the development and promotion of sports and recreation. The funds will be used to support the promotion, development, and implementation of sporting activities at the community and parish levels. The allocation will also go towards the development of a national network of world-class sports support services designed to discover talents in Jamaica.
In Sports continues to carry out its mandate to develop and unearth talent at the grassroots level. For this financial year, the allocation will also include support for the Reggae Girls, the Sunshine Girls. We are the creative ministry. We get our programs done and we find a way to get good results.
We're signing out for today, but not to worry. You can rewatch this offering or other content like this by visiting our website, jis.gov.jm. Do join us again tomorrow on this same station as we bring you another informative, educational, and entertaining package of Jamaica Magazine. On behalf of all of us here at the GIS, I am Adrian Atkinson. Thank you so much for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.